Perfect.
Okay.
So welcome, Jill. Thank you so much for volunteering to have a talk today about your journey with obsessive compulsive disorder and to bring awareness to that for other people. So I appreciate it. So thank you.
Okay, it's my pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
You're very welcome. So I'll just start off, I suppose, with when did you first feel like you had OCD, or what started to happen in your life to even think about OCD? Because it's not something that, unless we kind of Google a lot or kind of have, education around it, we might know. How did you come to think that you had OCD? What age were you, or what was going on in your life?
Well, it was actually officially diagnosed when I was 39, but I knew I had something from the age of 8, but I didn't know what it was. But I was having a lot of anxiety around the safety of people I really cared about. In fact, it probably predated 8. I would have this thing where I would really, my father would travel on a scooter back from London to Kent every night. And I would be very anxious that he would have an accident. And so I started waiting for him at a certain place. I would walk down the road and wait at the phone box a few streets away for him to come. And it became, I started thinking that me being there helped keep him safe. And I think that was the first time I really felt that I had some sort of control over his safety because of these thoughts I was having. And I believe that, it can be quite common in children where they feel that, if they don't do certain things, then it will keep people safe. But for me, it kind of just got worse. It didn't stop. It just kind of escalated throughout my life. Yeah.
And did that lead into you checking a lot around your both parents, or was it just around your dad? Was it kind of zoned in a lot on him?
It's just around my dad, actually, interestingly. I hadn't thought of that. It wasn't around my mother, but I think that's because my mum was there and so I could see her and that she was okay. But I knew that he was in a dangerous situation. I mean, I probably heard my mum talking about it, because coming home from London to Kent on a motor scooter is pretty dangerous. And so but how I kind of got into my head that I could keep him safe, I believe was the beginnings of the OCD.
Yeah. It's very interesting. And did you hear your mum kind of talking about how dangerous it was for your dad to be on a motorcycle, home? And did you hear that a lot in the environment?
Yeah, I think I probably did. I don't actually remember, but I think she was a warrior. My mother was a warrior, and so I can only assume that that was the message I got. This is dangerous. So that created anxiety in me, and I kind of found a way to cope with it by waiting by this phone box. Meant that he would be okay. But it, a ritual, whereas I
of course
would then have to do it.
Yeah,
he wouldn't be.
Yeah. And did you feel like when he did come home and you were at the phone box, did you feel like, oh my God, such relief, Daddy's home, and I helped that happen,
Yeah, extraordinary relief, and like, oh, he's alive, he's safe. But then obviously, he went to London 5 days a week. And interestingly, I didn't have it with him going. It was only the return journey. I don't know why. However, I was relieved by that. But then it became some sort of thing where if I couldn't be there, then I wouldn't. He wouldn't be safe. So, come rain or shine, I would be by that telephone box waiting for him to come. So,
And if there was ever a time where he got delayed or, he didn't come home on the time, do you remember how he dealt with that?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, no, because inevitably, because of traffic, less than today, but he would have been delayed. And so that will create a lot of anxiety, more, it will build up. And I would probably have been repeating things in my head to keep him safe, to make him calm, to make it be okay. Kept watching, you know, kept vigilant, then and then he would come. And he never didn't come. It was always around 5:30. You know, it's always around the same time. So, however, yeah, it was, I can remember, yeah, the anxiety rising. And probably this continued later, by the time we'd moved house. So that it wasn't waiting by the phone box, it was waiting by the front window. And he wouldn't be on his motorbike, he'd be on the train. So, yeah, so he would have to leave the station and then he'd have to cross a very busy main road. And I had this vision that at that main road, he would be hit by a car and killed or badly injured. And so, and I remember that anxiety coming up, you know, if he was a few minutes late, because, you know, trains are late. So, and the relief when he came, but, you know, realizing that on some level that it would be again, it would happen the next day and the next day. You know, the relief, even then I knew was only temporary.
Yeah, of course. Exactly. And would you look to reassurance from your mum if he was a bit delayed, or did you even vocalize that, or did you even know how to, I suppose?
Yeah, no, I didn't know how to, but I didn't vocalize it to my mum because I think in our family, the message was, don't worry your mother. She was very prone to migraine. She was neurotic. She worried a lot. And so I think the message, not just from my dad, or not even from my dad, but from my extended family, my mum's mum, my mum's sister, my cousins, was that, you know, don't worry, win. So I didn't know, I didn't take it to her. I took it on to me. And I think eventually I did, it wasn't around my dad, it was around something else. I had this thing running alongside this safety of my dad. I had this fear that I would catch something from someone if I touched them in the street. And I remember, and in my head in those days, it was fleas, because fleas was the worst thing you could catch, you know, in my 8-year-old head. So I remember I was having a bath one night. My mum was bathing me, so I was really young. And I said to her, I get these feelings, these thoughts that I will catch something from somebody if I touch them. And she overreacted. She was obviously very frightened by it, but what her reaction was that she slapped me, you know, and I was in the bath, so I was naked. So she slapped me, told me not to be so stupid. And from that really reinforced that I couldn't tell her anything, or I couldn't tell anyone anything, simply because it was crazy behavior. It wasn't to be vocalized, it wasn't to be shared. It was to be kept to myself. Yeah.
And that's quite common, you know, people repressing these behaviors, these emotions, because they're afraid they're not accepted to share, so then they hold it in. And did you feel a sense of responsibility that if you did touch someone on the street, you got the fleas, you passed them to someone else? Was it always around other people, i.e., you know, your dad, safely? And then with the fleas, was it about you passing it to someone else, or was it about you having them? Do you know what I mean?
No, it was about me having them. It wasn't about me then passing them on. It was about me being contaminated by someone else's fleas. And then that kind of developed into more of a, you know, I feared that not only would they give me fleas, but I would somehow absorb their personality, that I would become them. And that was something that I can, you know, even then I knew it was irrational. However, I couldn't stop that. I couldn't stop that fear that somehow passing someone on the stairs, passing someone in the street, you could kind of transfer energy somehow. And, you know, I think a lot of this was based in superstition in the beginning. I had some friends at the time who were very superstitious. And I remember one of the superstitions they had was if you passed someone on the stairs, you could swap into each other. Mm-hmm. So I think it came from somewhere. I don't think it came from my imagination. And there was another one that if you saw an ambulance, you had to hold your collar until you saw a four-legged animal. And this family were riddled with superstition. And I kind of picked up these things from them. My mind was very ripe for that. Where it was, to absorb that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And what would make you distinguish between one person you'd be okay with, or was it just everyone that you're thinking, I don't want to be like them? Had you particular traits in an individual you were looking for that label, like I want to stay away from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it started off with people who look really scruffy. But then it developed into, so that was a physical thing, you know. And it became more people I knew, and this is many years later, people who I didn't like, people who I thought were somehow, I don't know, just not very nice or not very interesting or not very clever. It wasn't about the physical, it was more about the personality, that somehow I would become like them and they would become like me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And more fear about I would become like them. I didn't think about them being like me. I thought about me being like them. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And what did you feel like would happen if that did happen? Like what was your thought process? Like, God, if that, even though the logical, like that's not true, but the rational part of the mind or the emotional part of the mind that, has these superstitions or these beliefs, what did you feel was the worst case scenario that would happen to you if that was true?
Yeah, well, what happened, I think because what would happen was, and I understand it more now, is that, so I'd have this thought and then I would be anxious. And because I was so anxious, I then couldn't connect with other people in the way I had been, because of the anxiety. So then I thought, so see, it's happened. You can't talk anymore. You can't be amusing. You can't be smart anymore. You've absorbed this other person and you're behaving like them. You're behaving in this fashion that isn't like you. And it's also almost like the reality bore out the fear. But I now know it was just because I was overthinking it. I was anxious. And it's really difficult to be able to relax and be yourself when you're feeling really anxious. So then I thought I'd lost myself. But really, I was, still myself, but over anxious, so nervous around people, and being nervous made me quiet and sort of just internalize, go into myself too much. Yeah.
And that was probably a worse fear for you because you didn't want to be that person, like that quiet, because maybe did you think that being like that would be maybe shameful or I'd be rejected if I was like that person that was contaminated or that you presumed was different, than you?
Yeah. I've always really wanted to be me. And because I had control over being me, because I could be this positive.
So you just disconnected there a little bit there, Jill.
Oh.
Sorry, just on the part where you said that you could be you're controlling the aspect of yourself that you could be you.
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to be me. I hear other people say, I wish I could be somebody else. And I never had that. I always wanted to be me. And I think not because I thought I was so great, but just because I had control over being me. And then if I was me, I could be somehow, I could be this vivacious. I mean, some of it was an act, obviously. You can't, but I was known to be very cheerful and positive and good, actually. I was academically good. I was told I was pretty. It's a bit embarrassing on the podcast.
Oh, not at all.
But I was because I had all these attributes that I'd really fostered somehow. Do you know what I mean? And encouraged in myself. So being myself was good, but but losing any part of me or being like someone else meant I lost control. And I had to have this control, and I had to be good. And I think I felt I had to be good to be loved, you know?
And it's like, it sounds like you had, you know, your traits of what Jill should be in a, like a box. And if anything, you were loved, as you said, you felt loved and maybe accepted as this character, you know, these traits that we have. And if anything outside that box is shunned upon, or we feel like won't be loved or won't be accepted or it's disapproved of, this is where the child will start creating all these control behaviors to make sure they don't be maybe bold someday, or they don't be, you know, angry, or whatever the case is. And then if they see that in another person, they're like, well, I don't want to be like that, because that can bring up this really deep sense of I could be rejected, fear, you know.
Yeah, and I can feel it now, just as you're talking, just this sense of this, it's more that it is anxiety, obviously, but it's really deep in here. This sense of, you know, terror, actually, that if I didn't have all those things, if I couldn't be all of those things that I needed to be, then I would be, I don't know, kind of lost. I would be, well, rejected. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's huge. Like, that's this really like survival, you know, trauma response that obviously for any child want to be accepted. But if we feel like, well, parts of me isn't, i.e. maybe parts that sometimes is naughty, or the parts that is angry, or the parts that is many different aspects of a child, that then what we do is we try to stay within that box that is approved of and ticks all the boxes. And that's where this element of really deep sense of control in the mind has to take over, you know. So what happened? When did you start kind of realizing that, you know, this was causing distress in your life? Because obviously when you're younger, you're probably just doing it. It became part of you, you know, probably became your control. That's what you were doing. You probably didn't know any different.
Yeah, I think it was actually when I went to senior school. I went to grammar school when we did have grammar schools then in the education system. And I had this thing whereby I would have to look at the soles of my shoes. I would have to pick up my feet and look at the soles of my shoes. So, and it wasn't a certain amount of times. It was like until it felt right. And I remember girls in the corridor laughing, pointing at me and laughing because I was doing that. So I would kind of try to disguise it, like I thought I'd trodden in something, or I thought I had something on the sole of my shoe. But I had to do this thing, and I must have looked really odd, you know, doing, but if I just knew that if I didn't do it, I would feel really uncomfortable. So I put up with the embarrassment of doing it. And I think what happened is, as time went on, they got less, the compulsions got less obvious. They were more things that I did in private, or if I was in public, it would be thoughts. But into my teens, late teens, very early 20s, I still had physical tics, you know, that were, and I still do a bit, you know, it's not as bad as it was, but I had these physical tics that where I had to do these things, these certain movements, to neutralize the thought, the obsessive, the intrusive thought. The intrusive thought will calm, and I'd do the thing, and I would put up with embarrassment. I mean, I think that was the thing. The embarrassment, it was terrible, and I think about the embarrassment now, but worse than the embarrassment would have been the not doing.
Of course, yeah. So that part, the emotional part of the mind, was like you felt so intense inside that it really didn't matter who was looking, because it had to be. You had to bring yourself into some sort of relief.
Yeah.
And were you having a lot of intrusive thoughts at the time, obsessive intrusive thoughts, like when you're at school and you're checking your shoe, like, I can't be like certain people? Were they kind of teamed around that still, or still around safety, and was it a mixture of different things? Or
I'm trying to think. I don't think it was about being other people. I don't think it was about safety. I think at that time it was more about being academically good. I think it was more that because there was a lot riding on me being in this school and being in the top stream of this school, and being actually in that first year, being the top person, the one who got the best exam results in the top stream of that school. So I think there was a lot of pressure, I think, from my dad to achieve academically. I mean, I will say also, I think being an only child didn't help, because I did feel I had to tick all the boxes for my parents. I had, you know, they couldn't have the, you know, the pretty one, the funny one, the clever one. I had to be all of them because I was the only one. So I had to, and there was a lot of pressure on me during that first year of grammar school to achieve, which I did. But as time went on, less so, you know. And I don't think there was that fear of being like someone else, except that then something happened to reinforce the something else, being like someone else. I mean, I don't know if this is appropriate, I hope it is. But when I was about 13, 14, I had this boyfriend, and he was really handsome. And all the girls really liked him. So I was at an all-girls school, and the all-boys school was across the football pitch. And this boy used to, when he was playing football, all the girls used to hang out the window and call his name and whatever. And they'd say to me things like, oh, what's it like to kiss blah-de-blah? And he was, you know, drop-dead gorgeous. So what then happened, which was really weird and really fed into my OCD, was that he and I broke up. And there was this girl in the school who had the same name as me, but spelt with a G. She was Jill with a G. And she started copying me. She had a haircut like mine. She had a blonde streak put in. She bought the same shoes as me. She rolled her skirt up to the same length as mine. She wore makeup like me. And then he started going out with her. Now that, can you imagine how that played in too? Because I thought, oh my God, she has become me. She had actually copied me. And it didn't feel flattering. It didn't feel like, oh, I must look great that she is copying me. And this has happened other times in my life. But it was like, oh my God, she's trying to be me. She's becoming me. She's taken over my life. She's even going out with my boyfriend. And that fed into this fear that I would lose me and someone else would be me and live my life. And it sounds really strange, because on some level I always knew it wasn't true. It wasn't possible. It was always going on, this split in me, knowing it wasn't happening and fearing it was happening. Yeah.
So there was like a battle.
There was a constant
conflict. So that was very challenging for you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Especially in teenage, you know, in as a teenager, going through many different stages in life and hormones and discovering different things, and then trying to cope with this conflict internally.
Yeah. And I think leading on from that time, I was bullied by a gang of girls from a different school, and it lasted about a year. It felt longer, but everywhere I went, some of this gang would be waiting for me, and I would be trapped with them, and I'd usually have a friend with me, and they'd say to the friend, oh, you can go, but she has to stay. And I remember not being able to tell my parents, because I didn't want to worry them, but I had to handle this on my own. And I can remember feeling actually quite suicidal at one stage, thinking, how am I going to get out of this? The only way I can get out of this is by just dying. But you know, I didn't, and I stayed with it. But I remember that was playing into the OCD as well. That was like, you know, that was probably then more about keeping me safe. You know, I had to perform certain rituals so that the threats were really frightening. Older girls, one coming up to me and saying blah blah blah, if you do this, or if you don't do this or do this, I'll break your back. And I'm talking
oh my God, really
vicious. This gang of girls,
awful,
who were exactly.
Especially when you felt like, you know, for anyone that's going through bullying or has experienced it, you know, the devastating effect that has on a person, you know, but to feel then that maybe you don't have someone to talk to, or someone that can support you, that you are on your own, is even more devastating for the person that's going through that.
Yeah. And I think I had, and what I did, and I think what I had was, I had these kind of behaviors that became like this. I was very twitchy around that time. I remember my dad commenting on it, said I had to stop doing it, but I couldn't stop doing it. It was like Tourette's, probably, you know, which I don't know if there is a connection, but I think there probably is a connection. And it was like I did these things to ward off harm. And then, you know, what happened was, actually, I stood up to these girls and they didn't break my back, and then they tried to be my friend. And my OCD brain or mine was saying, you know, that's because you did these, you know, that's because you did.
Okay, of course, yeah.
You know?
So great, it's good that that validates why you do these behaviours, because it actually, it works. So then, of course, you're going to keep doing them, you know.
And that went on for, you know, so and the physical manifestations now, you probably notice I blink quite a bit. That's a sort of hangover from the physical stuff, and sometimes I do it, but I've noticed it's been markedly better since I met you, and I've been doing the OCD breathing. But sometimes I get this thing where I can't stop blinking, and it's not like a twitch in my eye, involuntary. I know I'm doing it, but again, I'd rather do it than sit with the discomfort. But that has really quieted down since I've been practicing the breathing.
It's amazing how, you know, there's all these different behaviours, whether they be physical, you know, tics or movements or like sensations or the blinking, to try and bring in some regulation when it feels so overwhelming internally. There's a lot going on, and we do all these behaviours. They're completely normal in the scheme of when we're feeling really, really overwhelmed and really challenged internally. We feel like it's hard to cope. So what happened then? When did it come to a point in your life that you felt like, you know, there's something here that I need to address, or I need to maybe seek help?
I think what happened was, when I was in my kind of early 20s and I worked in advertising, I got very involved in drinking and drugs. So I was taking cocaine and drinking alcohol, and that kind of alleviated some of the intrusive thoughts. And so I used drink and drugs to cope with it. So it wasn't until I got to a stage, I think I was 37, and I just had a baby. So I could no longer continue with that lifestyle I'd been living, this hedonistic lifestyle. And I think then I realised that there was something very wrong. And it was when I was 39, I went into rehab. And that's when somebody said to me, "You have obsessive compulsive disorder." And I'd never heard of it. I mean, I thought I was mad. My dad had told me I was mad. My dad, who I love so much. And I believed it, you know? And so it was such a relief. So I found out it had a name, and it was very common in alcoholics and addicts. And that sometimes the drink and drugs were used to alleviate the intrusive thoughts and the compulsions, you know. So then I had a name for it, and when I left rehab, I went to the National Health gave me some CBT, which and what I was to do was I was to write down every time I had an intrusive thought. Now, I mean, they were coming so thick and fast. I wasn't complicated anymore. My brain was clear. But I was walking down the street writing them down, and I thought, this is ridiculous, because now I'm writing. It's making it more. They're coming more because I'm more conscious of them. So I kind of gave up on the CBT. But that was my first inroad into trying to do something about it, and this was in 1998. From 1998 onwards, so I tried CBT, and then I I was seeing a psychiatrist diagnosed with OCD, and prescribed paroxetine, SSRI, at 60 milligrams to help it. And I took 20, 40, 60. When I took 60, I just felt I couldn't think at all, let alone, so I came down to 40. And it never really helped the OCD. I think I kidded myself. I think it elevated my mood a bit, but it didn't really help with the OCD. I told myself it was helping, but it wasn't really helping.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, I suppose, there I am on the paroxetine for a long time, 18 years, I think I took the paroxetine, during which time I think I tried various things. I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous. I now go to Narcotics Anonymous, but I was trying anything. I tell you what, actually, what was my really big quest was I trained for 5 years as a psychotherapist, which is as I work as a therapist.
Brilliant.
Today, yeah.
Fantastic.
For every paper I read, I was searching for this key to help me to get rid of the OCD. Mm-hmm. I was in psychoanalysis for 6 years, didn't help the OCD, nothing helped, Then years later, so there's the CBT, then there's the just reading everything that I could find, and when the internet, and then Googling things and blah, blah, blah. And eventually I tried in 2018, I tried CBT with ERP. So
okay.
Response
yeah, I know, yeah.
Yeah. So I tried that. And what did it do? What it did was made it worse, actually, in the end, because the emotional response prevention was stopping me doing the compulsions, but it wasn't stopping the intrusive thoughts. So the intrusive thoughts had nothing to switch them off. So, as we know, we do have the thought, and then we do the compulsion, which can be another thought or can be an action or whatever. So I had nothing to switch it off. So then I was at the mercy of these thoughts again, so it's another technique that is being used that made it worse for me. So, that.
And what did you do? Can I just ask you, Jill, there around the, so I done, for me that, suffered with OCD as well, I had done CBT. I got to understand, the mind, the logical understanding. And I did get a little bit of relief when I come out from a session, because it was like, when you go in and you share, you do get a little bit of a lift. But then I was stuck back with the thought and stuck back with the compulsions. And mine was just checking the internet all the time, checking, is this normal? Is this normal? Am I going to act on this? Is this really OCD? Because you always have the doubt, is this really OCD or is this true because of how you feel, Yeah,
no, absolutely. I mean, I was declared by the National Health OCD free. Oh, you've gone. Linda, come back.
Hi. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, oh good.
You're there.
I can't hear you. There you are. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So when that happened, I was recording, I was guided to record my intrusive thoughts, or the intrusive thoughts, the obsessive intrusive thoughts, into a voice note and to listen to them on repeat. Now, I was having intrusive thoughts, obsessive intrusive thoughts of harming family members. So, and then myself. So to listen to that then all the time, the whole idea was to spike the anxiety so much that then the thought would lose its kind of power. But I felt like I was constantly being traumatized. It was so distressing, and it was actually, for me, I felt it very dangerous to actually have to listen to that. The psychological state I was in at the time anyway. But just in relation to when you're doing the ERP, because a lot of people have talked about that, and they'll find it so hard to sit and not sit, but not do the compulsion, just resist the compulsion. But what happens is people might say we have a compulsion of, for example, I don't know, touching a handle or checking something online, and say you resist, you have the intrusive thought, obsessive intrusive thought comes, it's there, and then you go to check, and then you try to refrain from checking, and that's great, and you sit with that feeling. But what can generally happen is that people then pick up another compulsion.
I know, it's so
do something different. You know, maybe they'll go to start picking up a pen or flicking a pen, or maybe they'll have, which is probably more challenging to notice, is that they'll have mental compulsion. So they'll have a thought, what if I done this? Or what if this bad thing happened? Or what if that happened in my past? Or what if I done this? Etc., etc. And then they'll come back and they'll try to counteract that thought with another thought. So they're spending the whole time doing that, you know?
No, that's exactly what happened to me. So I got rid of some compulsions I would do without the intrusive thought. I would do them as a matter of course, as a just in case, you know. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't use 3 bits of loo roll. I wouldn't use 3 tissues. I had a real thing around, I wouldn't put 3 things in the bin. I had a real thing around the number 3. I'd avoid the number 3 as much as I could. But so they taught me to put 3 bits of loo roll down the loo, but yeah, so I could do that. I didn't do anything with the intrusive thoughts. The intrusive thoughts was still coming, only I didn't have anything to switch them off with. So then I started, counteracting them with neutralizing picture images. So I would get an intrusive thought, and then which I would call negative, and I would counteract it with a positive thought. So maybe a photograph of me and my daughter. It actually happened at a happy photo at a Rolling Stones concert in 2012. That was my image. So I'd go bad image or thought, good image, counteract. And it became just like constant. And it got to a place that was so bad because of the CBT with ERP, I believe, and also my dad's death, that I relapsed. So I had been clean and sober for 21 years, and I relapsed in 2019. Short but painful. Went into rehab again, tried to get help with the OCD, didn't get any help with the OCD, in fact, less than help. It became worse. They didn't seem to understand it. They said all addicts are obsessive compulsive. It's the obsession to use. And no, it's obsessive compulsive disorder. It's separate from the obsession to drink or take a drug. You know, they're not anywhere near the same. So eventually I found Narcotics Anonymous, which is the most wonderful fellowship, where I've met a lot of people who also have OCD. One of them put me in contact with, this friend of mine, he actually used heroin to turn off the OCD thoughts. I mean, that is extreme. And he said, you know, it worked until it didn't work, you know.
Of course.
So he told me about, so sad. Obsessive Compulsives Anonymous. So this was my next thing. So I went to OCA, and that didn't do anything either. I was online with people who have obsessive compulsive disorder, but they were doing it from the top down. They weren't doing it from the bottom up. They weren't addressing the anxiety. They were addressing a 12-step program to it of abstinence, i.e. abstinence from drink and drugs and shopping and gambling and sex, your behavior that's inappropriate, and abstaining from compulsions. Now that's not going to work for some people with OCD, myself definitely, you know.
Of course, yeah. So that's what drives the compulsion.
That's what drives it. So OCA didn't work. So that was in 2020, 2021, and then it was when I got and the only time, and it's now having found relief through your program, is because, and it was a complete fluke, because I was thinking, I've got to do meditation. Meditation is something that helps, but I can't meditate because when I meditate, the obsessive, intrusive thoughts come in too much. They see a gap and they fill it. So I thought, okay, what can I do? So I'd been to see my osteopath, and he said, yeah, you're not breathing properly. So I said, right, I've really got to meditate. So I went online and I put in meditation for people with obsessive compulsive disorder, and you popped up.
Okay, very good.
And it was like, and so, you know, obviously you can ask me questions and whatever, but
yeah.
And so it was by doing your program that I have now got relief from it. I've been doing it for 12 weeks now. I'm probably 90% better. I've got It's still there, a little bit, 10%. But I can live with that. But I know from what you've said that I don't even have to keep that 10%. As long as I do what I do the breathing, I do the every day I need to do it, and I up my seconds in holding the with the breath, and I don't mind it. I mean, you've said I don't have, or probably won't have to do it for the rest of my life. I don't mind doing it for the rest of my life. I'm 65 now. I've been plagued by OCD since I was at least 8. I look forward to it. I actually look forward to it now, and it is, the thing is that it works. I mean, that's the message that why I said I'd like to do this podcast, is because if you've tried everything else and it hasn't worked, or has only partially worked, you've come to the right place. This is the answer.
I love that. Jill, I've just been in relation to have you had periods, so obviously having the obsessive intrusive thoughts and these behaviours, the compulsions, we understand now, and I'm all about really that, OCD is symptoms. So as a child, you develop these compulsions due to having these fear-based thoughts, so the OCD is a symptom of fear-based emotion that we're holding. In other words, fear if something went wrong, or safety, element of being unsafe, or what if I'm like that person, I could be disapproved of or disowned, or there's a lot going on there that we're not conscious of, obviously. Have you had any relief in, obviously from 8 to you came to do the program, it's a long time. What way did it affect? Obviously it's huge because it's you growing up your whole life experiencing these symptoms and dealing with this anxiety, which is incredibly difficult. How has it affected your life, obviously with your family or your kids, or how did it affect you then, to be a parent and to be able to have some sort of an enjoyment in your life,
Yeah, I think what's happened, I mean, being a parent, because I have 2 daughters, I mean, that was really hard, because the fear of something bad happening to them became really paramount. That became less about I think it's called transformational OCD, someone else. But it was then the harm OCD, not that I would, but I do remember that when I first had my first daughter, I had this fear that I could put her in the microwave and turn the microwave on. Wow. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
So I went upstairs out of the kitchen to carry on feeding her, and then I thought I could throw her out the window. That was terrifying. But I think what it did was, it became so overwhelming that I found it helpful, having not discovered this method at the time, that I have a belief in a higher power, and I would hand over her safety and my other daughter's safety to my higher power, to then talk to their higher power. I don't know how it works, but just I'd hand it over. It would be like a prayer, but
faith,
but a prayer but that felt healthy. It didn't feel like, got to do this prayer or they won't be safe. It gave me some relief, actually. That
brilliant.
I could over their safety. I could teach them about safety, but I could only do so much. There would come a time, and now they're both out in the world on their own. One living in London, and one just about to graduate from Newcastle University. And so I think with parenting, I hadn't really thought of it. It was so important to me that I did it well and that I enjoyed it, that I found a way with the prayer, I suppose, to offload. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that before, because I mean, being a parent has been the most wonderful experience. But what I have noticed is that since I've had this recent relief from it, I'm enjoying it even more. I'm definitely enjoying life more, and I can think thoughts without them having to be intruded upon all the time. I can think about nice things.
Lovely.
Yeah, which is, but it has affected my whole life. My wedding day, it was my OCD used to really step up around important occasions, times when I wanted to really enjoy it. It would kind of, I got the feeling that the thoughts would then come in more, so important. You know, so maybe I'd have this thought, you know, I go, I'm not going to sabotage this occasion. And I get a little bit relief from that. And I pray and I go, please, can I have some time, you know, to enjoy this? But I mean, and that was it was effective to a degree, but nothing has been as effective as this. But, you know, I still do the prayers.
Oh, yeah. And I think, like, for someone, whatever they're into, it doesn't really matter. No. You know, once they feel like, you know, and some people will go back, you know, there's faith, like, in many different ways, you know, and to feel like you're connecting to something else, maybe as guidance or some support, you know, it's really helpful as well, especially through times when we might feel like there's no way out of this, and we have to feel, we know, to feel maybe that, I don't know, connecting to something bigger than ourselves to maybe help us is, well, it helped you, obviously, you know, to be able to be as good as you are as well today, you know.
I tell you one thing that's an aside to this, and it is connected, is that when there's a real crisis, I'm really good. So when I'm imagined crises, you know, bad things that can happen, I'm full of anxiety. When something really awful happens, I'm really the person you want there, which is, how strange is that? But true. My youngest daughter had febrile convulsions when she was 16 months, and I didn't know what they were, and the doctor didn't know what they were. We were in an ambulance being blue lighted to hospital, and she stopped breathing in the ambulance. And I was on oxygen. I was pumping oxygen into her while the paramedic was getting the Valium shot ready to give her, while the driver was radioing the hospital saying, child coming in, blah, blah, blah. And I was so calm. No intrusive thoughts. No, she'll live if I do this. It was all about, I can handle this. And the paramedic goes, Mum, all right? And I'm going, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm fine. You know, and it was all, I don't know quite how that.
That's very common, Jill, you know. It's very common. Yeah, it is very common because, so for example, say someone like us, right, they're dealing with obsessive intrusive thoughts, and they're so consumed with how can I get rid of these thoughts, like, because they're causing them so much distress. So they're in that zone of just constantly either terrified they're going to have the next thought will be about that content, and then they're so worried about how am I going to get rid of, how can I just get rid of these thoughts, like they're just awful. So what happens then is to spend their time dealing with that. That's all they think about. That's what was needed. Like, that's all I could think about is how do I change this? And because it was there, constant. So then when something comes into your life, like a challenging situation, or some sort of a crisis in a family member, like yourself, your daughter, or someone had to change a job or relationship issue, something big, right? Happens is that their focus of attention is completely gone onto that crisis. They're still having the same adrenaline, cortisol release within the body. They're still having the same worry. But they're focused on, oh, this is because, like, I'm feeling like this, but I'm so focused on that other person or that situation that the thoughts don't even have a chance. Maybe they are coming a little bit, but they're not even conscious of them because they're so focused on this is their survival. They're in that state of this is what's happening in my life now, you know.
And that's what we need. So the cortisol is coming into our systems because we need it, as opposed to because we imagine we need it. So it's a real problem. So I'm really good at real problems. And that happened, you know, when I retired. That was part of why because, you know, I work with people and I focus on them. And so when I'm focusing on them, I get relief from the OCD.
Exactly. That's very common.
Yeah, that's right. So when I retired, it was like OCD, you know, it was coming up, all sorts of things were coming back in, you know. But I think I've never let it stop me do anything, because but it has made it harder to do things.
That's brilliant.
I look back and I go, gosh, if I could get this message out to people that it doesn't have to be like that, I'm looking forward to the rest of my life where I don't have to struggle with it. You know, it is possible, but can you imagine how much more is possible when you don't have this constant monkey on your shoulder?
Exactly, yeah. And a lot of people will say, you know, I have space now, like I'm thinking about, you know, things like holidays, or I'm thinking about general stuff, but before that it's just constantly consumed with it. And just in relation to, obviously, during the program, what did you find most, like, what did you find most beneficial about the program?
Well, I think what I found most, I was just trying to think. I mean, obviously the breathing itself, doing the OCD breathing, doing the preparation breathing, taking that time out, that I found most effective. But it was also, I think, the way you teach it, because it's kind of, you explained right from the beginning that it didn't really matter what the intrusive thoughts were, didn't really matter what the compulsions were. It was that we needed to work on the anxiety, and you understood, you got it. You know, I knew for the first time I was talking to I was being treated by somebody who knew what it was like and had success in overcoming it. Whereas in the past, I've been treated by people that didn't know what it was like. I've never had OCD therapy or treatment from somebody who didn't have, who did have OCD. I'd always had it from people who, it was an abstract. It wasn't a real thing. So I knew you got me. I knew you understood. And you said, this is where we need to go. We need to look at it, deal with the anxiety. It doesn't matter about the content. It is the anxiety, and it made so much sense. So I think that was the initial thing. I believed in it, that this method. I believed in it, and then I just did it. I did what I was told, which is easy for me.
Yeah, you've done really well. You did so well. And like, did you feel like at the start, oh, I don't know, maybe if I'll get a little bit of relief, for, because you know, a lot of the people that has done the program, like the results will be very much big, you know, it'll be huge. Like, doesn't mean it'll be gone within 12 weeks, but there's so much relief, and it gets better and better and better and better. And we're not dealing with the symptoms, so it's not like we're just dealing with the thoughts and we're dealing with the compulsions, or we're dealing with the root, which is the fear-based emotion that's being activated all the time. So when what did you really think, by like where I'd be when I start to where you are now, did you think that was even possible for you when you signed up?
No, I was hopeful, but because of that record, I was more hopeful than I'd been. But no, because so many times it hadn't worked. And I thought, here, this is going to be the thing. This is going to be the thing. The thing is, this is the thing. It has been the thing. And I tell you, I missed a day of my breathing. And I did notice the day after, I was a little bit more anxious. So, I mean, I know that I need to do it every day, and that's okay. And it may not be the same for everybody else. But no, I didn't think I'd be where I am. I thought I might get some relief, but I didn't think this is like, really 90% better, 10% still there. Working on the compulsions now. But now it's the right time. It's not like I went straight into working on the compulsions.
Yeah.
Having a little bit of success, but not giving myself a hard time.
No, of course.
Just working on, you know, what you've said, and to know that, I mean, I can always check in with you and with the others, having the peer support and all of that. You know, it's like it's just progress, and I just think I feel actually happy, which is so much why my feelings, you know, it's good.
I'm so happy for you.
I know, I'm so happy for me. I'm so happy for you. But actually, we do need to finish now, because
of course,
I have to get ready for my patient. But
okay.
if we want to continue it at all, then we can.
Yeah, maybe in a few weeks, like maybe we give it another maybe 2 months and see how you get on with that, you know, as you continue, because it progressively gets better. And I suppose I love about the program is that it's about empowering, you know, so you were empowered from the very beginning with tools and techniques, not just to do when you've taught, but to do every day that's changing this directly at the root. We don't have to go back to our childhood and, you know, change that, because we can't. So we have to just regulate the nervous system. So I suppose if you had any word to, what would you say to someone else that maybe listening to this, maybe in the future, or that could be a home maybe for years with suffering with OCD, and they hear this, what would your message would you give them coming from a place where you are now?
Yeah, well, I'd say don't hesitate, just do it. And the one thing I found that it starts to work very quickly. So you don't have to do like 12 weeks or 10 weeks to get some sort. It from the beginning of doing this, it starts to work. So what I'd say is it's the best investment you'll ever make. I mean, and it's not monetary, or it's, you put your time in. Of course, we have, you know, we pay for it, but you put your time in. But it is, you know, the best thing you can do for yourself if you're an OCD sufferer. That's what I'd say. 100%.
Thank you so much, Jill. And, you know, you should be so proud of yourself. We have to really mention that like, wow, because you've had such a journey from having it from 8 to many years of that. I don't even know how many years that is. You've kind of suffered with it.
Well, 65 now, so it's too many. But, you know, now it's, and sometimes I go, God, I wish I'd discovered it sooner, but I could have saved myself a relapse. However, I didn't discover it till this year. And I'm so grateful that I did.
Exactly. And everything happens at the right time. You know, I do believe that, and you're guided to the right thing. So just be very proud of yourself, I think, is a big one for how far you've come and your journey. And most importantly, for sharing it with others, because you're brave. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. And I really appreciate you having this chat today.
Okay, thanks, Linda.
Okay, thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.